Nobody wanted the fat poor girl, until the Mafia boss said, "She's the one." A struggling waitress with nothing but debt and a sister to protect accidentally overhears something she shouldn't in an upscale restaurant. But instead of killing her, Chicago's most feared crime lord makes her an offer: become his fake fiancé or disappear forever. "No one would believe I'd choose someone like you unless it was real love," he tells her coldly. "That makes you perfect. Forced to live in his mansion, wear his clothes, and learn his world, she expects nothing but cruelty. Yet when someone mocks her body, the Mafia boss slams them against a wall. She's perfect exactly as she is. Anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me." As she discovers the man behind the monster, danger closes in from all sides. A traitor lurks within his organization. Enemies watch their every move. And the line between pretending and feeling begins to blur dangerously. What happens when a forced arrangement turns into something real? When the most powerful man in Chicago throws himself in front of a bullet to save the woman no one else wanted? And how far will they go to protect what began as a lie but became the only truth that matters? Through her blurred vision, Olivia hurriedly cleaned up the broken glass, her hands trembling. The weight of Lorenzo Valenti's stare made her skin prickle with awareness, but she refused to look up. The drunk patron who'd groped her was still laughing with his friends, their voices grating against her already frayed nerves. "That's coming out of your paycheck," her manager Marco hissed, hovering over her like a vulture. "And you'll stay late to deep clean the entire dining room." Olivia bit her lip, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. She couldn't afford another pay cut. Emma's medication was due for refill next week. The thought of her sister waiting at home, probably doing her homework despite the late hour, gave her the strength to steady her hands. The other servers walked past her, some with pitying glances, others with barely concealed smirks. Being the fat girl meant she was an easy target for both customers and coworkers. She'd learned to steel herself against their jabs, but tonight felt different. Maybe it was the accumulated stress of the mounting bills, or Emma's worsening condition, or just the humiliation of being groped and then blamed for it. As she gathered the last pieces of glass, a pair of expensive Italian leather shoes entered her field of vision. The restaurant had nearly emptied, but Lorenzo Valenti still lingered. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly looked up, meeting those dark eyes that had tracked her all evening. "Stand up," he commanded softly, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. Olivia rose, painfully aware of her disheveled appearance and tear-stained face. Lorenzo towered over her, his bespoke suit emphasizing his powerful build. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the subtle silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, and the small scar above his right eyebrow. "Your name?" he asked, though she suspected he already knew it. "Olivia Russo, sir," she answered, hating how her voice wavered. His eyes narrowed slightly at her surname, something unreadable flickering across his features. The bodyguard who'd been at his side all evening shifted closer, his hand resting casually near his concealed weapon. "Tell me, Miss Russo," Lorenzo said, his accent becoming more pronounced. "What exactly did you overhear during our private dinner?" Sunlight stabbed through Olivia's thin curtains, her body aching from the previous night's extended shift. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, displaying a text from Marco that made her stomach clench. "Come in 2 hours early. We need to discuss last night's incident." She pressed her face into the pillow, suppressing a groan before dialing Emma's number. Her sister answered on the second ring, her voice still groggy from her medication. "Hey, sunshine." Olivia forced cheerfulness into her tone. "How are you feeling?" "Better today," Emma replied, though Olivia could hear the fatigue in her voice. "The incision site doesn't hurt as much. I'll bring dinner after work. Whatever you want from Jimmy's diner." "Their chocolate milkshake?" Emma's voice brightened. "You got it, kiddo." At Stiletto, Marco was waiting with his arms crossed. The morning sun through the windows did nothing to warm his expression. "The gentleman you inconvenienced last night is a regular. You'll apologize to him personally when he arrives for lunch." "But he," Olivia started, "and the glasses are coming out of your pay." No discussion. Throughout her shift, Olivia noticed unusual activity around the restaurant. Men in tailored suits carried briefcases through the kitchen's back entrance, disappearing into the office. Their presence set her nerves on edge. While delivering a charcuterie board to Private Room 3, Olivia pushed open the door without thinking. Lorenzo Valenti sat at the head of the table, surrounded by associates, all eyes fixed on a laptop screen. Her heart stopped when she recognized herself on the surveillance footage from the previous night, clearly visible near their table during their conversation about money laundering. Lorenzo's dark gaze snapped to her, promising consequences. Olivia backed away, nearly dropping the platter in her haste to escape. For the rest of her shift, she felt eyes on her. Lorenzo's men positioned throughout the restaurant, watching her every move. She considered going to the police, but the thought of Emma's medical bills kept her silent. One missed paycheck could mean disaster for her sister's recovery. At 11 p.m., Olivia changed out of her uniform with trembling hands. She counted her tips, barely enough for Emma's milkshake. The back alley door creaked as she pushed it open, the cool night air offering momentary blank relief. Until 3 black SUVs appeared, blocking both ends of the alley. Lorenzo Valenti emerged from the middle vehicle, his presence filling the narrow space. 2 bodyguards flanked him, their weapons visible under their jackets. "Miss Russo," he said, his voice smooth as silk but sharp as a blade. "I believe we need to have a conversation." Olivia's back pressed against the cold brick wall, her heart hammering as Lorenzo approached. His tailored suit did nothing to hide his imposing physique, and the streetlight cast shadows across his angular features. The bodyguards moved with practiced efficiency, blocking both ends of the alley from any potential witnesses. "Please," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't hear anything, I swear." Her fingers scraped against the rough brick, seeking an escape that didn't exist. Lorenzo studied her with the detached interest of someone examining an insect under glass. His dark eyes traveled from her face down to her sensible work shoes, taking in every detail of her curves that her casual clothes couldn't hide. "Allow me to offer you a ride home, Miss Russo," he said, his voice deceptively gentle. When Olivia shook her head, his expression hardened. "I insist." The words carried enough menace to make her knees weak. The interior of the SUV smelled of expensive leather. Olivia perched on the edge of the seat, trying to make herself smaller as Lorenzo settled beside her. He began speaking, revealing intimate details of her life that made her blood run cold. Her mounting debts, Emma's medical history, even the car accident that had claimed their parents 13 years ago. "I am Lorenzo Valenti," he stated, watching her face pale at the notorious name. "And you, Miss Russo, may be the solution to my current situation." He explained his predicament with the Moretti family, his need for a believable relationship to secure their merger. Olivia's mind spun as she realized where this was heading. "She's the one. We need," Lorenzo announced to his consigliere in the front seat. The older man's skeptical expression made Olivia shrink further into the leather. Who would believe I'd choose someone like her unless it was genuine? It's perfect. The deal he offered was simple yet impossible. 6 months pretending to be his adoring fiancée in exchange for financial security and protection. The alternative hung unspoken between them. She knew too much to simply walk away. The SUV pulled up to her building, and Lorenzo's final words followed her out. "Until morning, Miss Russo. Though we both know what your answer must be." Emma was waiting inside their apartment, wrapped in her favorite blanket. "Where's my milkshake?" she asked, trying to smile through obvious pain. Olivia's eyes fixed on the stack of medical bills on the counter, each one marked with urgent red stamps. The devil's offer echoed in her mind as she watched her sister shift uncomfortably, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. The morning sun crept through Olivia's threadbare curtains as she sat curled on her couch, still in her worn flannel pajamas. Her phone felt heavy in her trembling hands. Dark circles ringed her eyes after a sleepless night spent explaining half-truths to Emma about a job opportunity that would take her away from home. "I'll do it." The message was simple, but typing those 3 words felt like signing away her soul. Seconds later, sharp knocks echoed through her apartment. 2 suited men entered with military precision, their presence filling her small living room. 1 hour, the taller one stated, handing her a sleek black duffel bag. Olivia's hands shook as she packed, aware of their scrutinizing gazes. Every item was logged into a tablet: clothing, toiletries, a few photos. When she reached for her phone, one guard smoothly replaced it with a new model. "For security," he explained without emotion. Emma's goodbye was the hardest part. Her sister's confused tears made Olivia's heart crack, but she forced a smile, promising regular visits and better medical care. The guards hurried them along, their patience wearing thin. The drive to Chicago's North Shore revealed a different world. Lorenzo's estate rose like a modern fortress, all glass and stone behind imposing gates. Security cameras tracked their every move as they approached. Inside, Lorenzo waited in his study, power radiating from his casual stance against an antique desk. He laid out her new life with clinical precision. No unsupervised outings, monitored communications, complete transformation into someone worthy of a Valenti. His team stood at attention. Victor Russo, the sharp-eyed consigliere; Marco, the silent chief of security, and Mrs. Calabrese, whose motherly demeanor seemed at odds with her surroundings. Each would play a role in molding Olivia into a convincing Mafia princess. The tension peaked when Lorenzo outlined her makeover plans. Someone shifted, eyes flicking to Olivia's curves. Before any words could form, Lorenzo's expression turned lethal. "She's perfect exactly as she is," he stated, each word dripping with dangerous intent. "Anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me." The silence that followed was deafening. As evening approached, Mrs. Calabrese led Olivia to her new quarters, a suite that belonged in a palace, connected to Lorenzo's room by an ornate door. "Appearances must be maintained," the housekeeper explained softly before leaving. Olivia explored her gilded cage, fingers trailing over silk sheets and crystal fixtures. The mirror reflected a stranger in designer sleepwear, her curves draped in midnight blue silk. Lorenzo's entrance was sudden, commanding. "Training begins at 6, he announced. At the doorway he paused, his dark gaze intense. "Consider this your last night of freedom, Olivia. Tomorrow you belong to me." The door clicked shut, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts, the weight of her bargain settling over her, like a heavy shroud. The digital clock showed 5:59 a.m. as Olivia smoothed down the cashmere sweater and designer jeans laid out for her. Her heart pounded against her ribs, knowing what awaited on the other side of that connecting door. Right on time, Lorenzo entered, his presence immediately dominating the space. He circled her slowly, his gaze methodically assessing every detail from her carefully brushed hair to her leather boots. The silence stretched uncomfortably until he finally spoke. "Acceptable. But by the end of today, you'll understand what being a Valenti requires." The morning unfolded in a blur of information. In his study, Lorenzo detailed his family's rise to power, their legitimate businesses serving as fronts for more lucrative enterprises. His voice carried authority as he corrected her slouching posture, demonstrating how a woman of power should carry herself. "Shoulders back, chin up," he instructed, his hands firm but surprisingly gentle on her shoulders. When she stumbled in the 4-inch Louboutin, his quick reflexes caught her. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her body, and she noticed his slight hesitation before releasing her. The afternoon brought a parade of stylists, turning her into someone who could believably stand beside Chicago's most feared crime boss. Throughout it all, Lorenzo's men filtered in and out, many casting doubtful glances her way. During lunch, one lieutenant's snide comment about designer sizes earned him a violent response from Lorenzo. The crack of the man's head hitting the wall echoed through the room as Lorenzo's hand tightened around his throat. "Insult her again, and you won't have a tongue to speak with." The threat hung in the air long after the terrified man scrambled away. "Why did you defend me?" Olivia asked when they were alone. Lorenzo's expression remained impassive. "You're mine now. No one disrespects what belongs to me." His words should have offended her, but instead sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. Evening found them in the formal dining room, crystal chandeliers casting elegant shadows across the massive table. Lorenzo scrutinized her every move as she navigated the complex place setting, correcting the angle of her knife and testing her memory of their fabricated romance. Her successful recitation of their cover story earned a slight nod. "You learn quickly," he observed, something shifting in his dark gaze. "That will keep you alive in my world." As servants cleared their plates, Lorenzo announced their first public test, his cousin's engagement party that weekend. Olivia returned to her suite, her mind spinning with protocol and etiquette, surprisingly determined to prove herself equal to this dangerous masquerade. The bathroom mirror reflected Olivia's pale face as she gripped the marble counter, her emerald gown a stark contrast against her trembling form. Her chest tightened as reality crashed over her like a tidal wave. In less than an hour, she'd face a room full of Chicago's most dangerous criminals, pretending to be madly in love with their leader. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision as her breaths came in sharp gasps. The connecting door opened, and Lorenzo entered, cutting an impressive figure in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Rather than showing irritation at her weakness, he quickly assessed the situation and guided her to sit on the plush ottoman. "Focus on my voice," he instructed, his usual cold tone replaced with unexpected gentleness. 4 counts in, hold for 7, out for 8. He demonstrated, his own breathing steady and calm. When her questioning gaze met his, something shifted in his dark eyes. "I learned this at 10, he revealed quietly. "After watching my parents die, these techniques kept me functioning when the panic threatened to overwhelm me." His admission hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken pain. "Vulnerability is not weakness," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's surviving what should have destroyed you." The words transformed something in Olivia's perception of him, this glimpse of humanity beneath the monster's mask. As her breathing steadied, Lorenzo helped her stand, his strong hands lingering at her waist. He produced a velvet box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that he slid onto her finger with surprising tenderness. "Tonight is your first test," he explained. "My family doesn't trust outsiders. They'll scrutinize every interaction between us." Without warning, he pulled her close, his lips meeting hers in what was meant to be practice but quickly blazed into something real. The kiss left them both shaken, their breath mingling as they slowly separated. "So they'll believe us," Lorenzo said roughly, his usual composure slightly fractured. Later, as Olivia descended the mansion's grand staircase, golden sunset light streaming through the windows, she found Lorenzo waiting below. His careful mask slipped for just a moment as he took in her appearance. "You look beautiful," he said, seeming startled by his own sincerity. In the limousine, Lorenzo reviewed final details while surprisingly taking her hand in his. "Stay close to me tonight," he instructed. "You're under my protection, no matter what happens." Olivia nodded, realizing with equal parts comfort and fear that she believed him. For the first time since this arrangement began, she truly trusted the devil to keep her safe. The grandfather clock chimed midnight as Olivia and Lorenzo entered the mansion's marble foyer, the echo of their successful evening still humming through her veins. She'd navigated the treacherous waters of his family's scrutiny without drowning, earning approving nods from even the most skeptical relatives. Her emerald gown whispered against the floor as she turned to face Lorenzo, catching the slight nod of approval in his usually stern expression. "You did well," he said, his deep voice carrying genuine acknowledgement. "Get some rest tomorrow. We begin planning our official engagement announcement." As Olivia ascended the grand staircase, her heels clicking against each step, she missed the way Lorenzo's face transformed when his phone buzzed. The warmth from their shared triumph vanished, replaced by a dangerous darkness as he answered the call. Still buzzing with leftover adrenaline, Olivia found herself unable to settle in her suite. She wandered the spacious rooms, trailing her fingers along expensive furniture, until curiosity drew her to explore more thoroughly. In the nightstand drawer, her fingers brushed against something hidden beneath the velvet lining an envelope. Her hands trembled as she pulled out surveillance photographs. There she was, weeks ago, locking up her apartment. Another showed her laughing with Emma outside the hospital. Photo after photo documented her life long before she'd ever laid eyes on Lorenzo at Stellato. Anger and fear propelled her through the mansion's corridors to Lorenzo's study. She burst in without knocking, photographs clutched in her shaking hand. Lorenzo sat behind his massive desk, seemingly unsurprised by her entrance. "You were watching me," she accused, throwing the photos onto his desk. "All this time before everything, why?" "Stellato became our operation months ago," he replied without apology, his dark eyes steady. "I needed to ensure you could be trusted before bringing you into my world." Before their confrontation could escalate, Victor burst through the door, his usually composed face tight with concern. "Boss, we have a situation. The Rosses—" "Leave," Lorenzo commanded Olivia, but she planted her feet firmly. "No," she challenged, surprising herself with her boldness. "If I'm your fiancé, I deserve to know what threats I'm facing." Something like respect flickered in Lorenzo's eyes as he studied her for a long moment before nodding to Victor to continue. "The Rossies know the engagement is fake," Victor reported grimly. "They're threatening to expose everything to the Morettis unless we give up the downtown territory. They sent these—" He dropped more surveillance photos on the desk, recent ones of Olivia at the mansion. Lorenzo's expression turned lethal. "Now you're truly mine to protect?" he growled. "No one touches what belongs to me." The early morning sun cast long shadows across Lorenzo's king-sized bed as Olivia stirred, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar silk sheets and masculine scent surrounding her. Reality crashed back as she spotted the gun on the nightstand, the same one Lorenzo had placed in her hands last night with such careful instruction. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, dark-suited figures patrolled the manicured grounds, their weapons visible even from this distance. The security presence had doubled overnight, a stark reminder of the threat hanging over them. The adjoining bathroom stopped her short. Where yesterday it had been a masculine space of chrome and dark marble, today it held evidence of her. Favorite shampoo brands, fluffy towels in her preferred shade of blue, even the specific face cream she used. The thoroughness was both thoughtful and unnerving. "Sleep well?" Lorenzo's voice came from the doorway. He was already dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, looking as though he'd been awake for hours. Over breakfast in his private study, Lorenzo outlined their new reality between sips of espresso. The mansion could be compromised, he explained, voice low. From now on, we're engaged everywhere, even here. Learn these signals. He demonstrated subtle hand movements, teaching her their private code. A brush of his watch meant danger. A specific way of adjusting his tie indicated they were being watched. The indoor shooting range echoed with gunfire as Lorenzo positioned himself behind her, adjusting her stance. Wider base, he murmured, his hands on her hips sending unexpected shivers through her. Breathe out as you squeeze the trigger. The target showed steady improvement over their hours of practice. Never accept drinks you haven't watched being poured, he instructed during their lunch break, seamlessly weaving security protocols into casual conversation. These families are allies, he indicated photos spread across his desk, but trust no one completely. Throughout the day, they practiced being lovers, his hand at the small of her back as they walked, her fingers straightening his tie, the casual intimacy of shared space. Each touch became less mechanical, more natural, until Olivia couldn't tell where the performance ended and reality began. The news about the Moretti dinner arrived via Victor just before sunset. They'll be looking for any cracks in our story, Lorenzo warned, tension evident in his jaw. The slightest mistake could destroy everything. Then we should know more about each other, Olivia suggested. Real details, not just our cover story. They settled in the library, the setting sun painting the room in amber tones. Lorenzo spoke of inheriting his empire at 12, of choices made in blood and necessity. Olivia shared memories of hospital bills and sacrificed dreams, of becoming a mother figure to Emma at 16. As midnight approached, they faced the intimate challenge of sharing his bedroom again. The day's practice touches had left an awareness humming between them, making the space feel smaller. I'll be working in my study once the lights are out, Lorenzo said, then paused. But today, he seemed to struggle with the words. Not everything was pretense for me. Olivia leaned over Lorenzo's mahogany desk, her fingers tracing the names and faces of the Moretti family members they would meet tonight. The thick dossiers contained everything from business holdings to personal habits, details she'd spent hours memorizing. Through the study's towering windows, she watched Lorenzo in the garden below, his tall frame commanding attention as he spoke with his captains. A small smile tugged at her lips as she observed his authoritative gestures. Where once his presence had made her tremble with fear, now she found herself drawn to his controlled power. The realization should have alarmed her, but instead it felt like a natural evolution of their complicated arrangement. When Lorenzo returned to the study, his shoes silent on the thick carpet, Olivia rattled off detailed information about each Moretti without consulting her notes. Giuseppe's wife collects rare orchids. Their youngest son Marco studied at Oxford, but dropped out to join the family business. And their consigliere has a weakness for aged whiskey. Lorenzo's dark eyes sparked with approval. Impressive, he murmured. But their preparation was interrupted by Olivia's phone buzzing Emma's face, lighting up the screen for their scheduled video call. To Olivia's surprise, Lorenzo settled beside her as she answered, his arm draping casually around her shoulders. Emma's excited face appeared, her eyes widening at the sight of Lorenzo. He smoothly took control of the conversation, weaving their fabricated love story with such conviction that even Olivia almost believed it. I knew something was different about you lately, Emma exclaimed, beaming at her sister. You're practically glowing. After the call ended, Olivia found herself fighting tears. Thank you, she whispered, for everything you're doing for Emma. The medical bills had vanished, replaced by top-tier care at Chicago's best hospital. Lorenzo's hand cupped her cheek, thumbing away a stray tear. This wasn't their practiced intimacy. His touch held genuine tenderness that made her breath catch. Your loyalty to her, your adaptability to this life, he said softly. You're remarkable, Olivia. In another world, you could have run an empire yourself. The rest of the afternoon blurred into intensive preparation. Lorenzo stood behind her during their etiquette refresher, his hands settling on her waist to adjust her posture. Heat bloomed where he touched her, the air growing thick with unspoken tension. As their heavily armored car approached the restaurant that evening, Lorenzo took her hand. Everything depends on tonight, he reminded her. The Morettis must believe we're in love. Olivia squeezed his fingers, surprising herself with her steady confidence. Then we'll convince them. Lorenzo studied her face in the dim car interior before closing the distance between them. His kiss wasn't their rehearsed performance. It was real, desperate, and consuming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. For luck, he whispered, as their car door opened to the Chicago night. The morning sun cast golden light across Lorenzo's private terrace as Olivia sipped her coffee, still riding high from their successful dinner with the Morettis. The antique wrought iron table between them held a spread of pastries and fresh fruit, much of it untouched as they savored their victory in comfortable silence. "You were perfect last night," Lorenzo said, his usual stern expression softened. "Even I almost believed we were in love." The praise warmed Olivia more than the morning sundae. Their peaceful moment shattered when Victor appeared, his face grave. "The Morettis have extended another invitation," he announced. "Their nephew's wedding this weekend. Every major family will be there." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. More eyes, more scrutiny. He turned to Olivia. "We'll need to intensify your training." The next few days became a blur of extended lessons. In Lorenzo's grand ballroom, with its crystal chandeliers and gleaming floors, he taught her to dance. His hand spread across her lower back, guiding her through complex steps. "The waltz is traditional," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "They'll expect us to open the dancing." Hour after hour, they moved together, her body learning to anticipate his leads, their movements becoming more fluid. Sometimes, caught in the rhythm and the heat of his touch, Olivia forgot they were practicing for a performance. Their routine was interrupted when Marco burst in, his usually stoic face concerned. "Emma's been asking questions," he reported, "about the sudden engagement to someone she's never heard of." Lorenzo's solution surprised them both. "Bring her here for the weekend," he suggested. "Let her see us together, make her a believer." Olivia's stomach nodded. "My sister doesn't belong in this world." "She's already in it through you," Lorenzo countered gently. "Better to control the narrative." When Emma arrived Friday evening, Lorenzo transformed. Gone was the cold crime boss, replaced by an attentive fiancé who listened to Emma's medical school dreams with genuine interest. He gave her a tour of the mansion's gardens, telling carefully edited stories about his family's history. During a quiet moment among the roses, Emma pulled Olivia aside. "The way he looks at you when you're not watching, that's not pretend, Liv." Her sister's words echoed in Olivia's mind later that night. With Emma across the hall, they had to maintain appearances by sharing Lorenzo's bed. In the intimate darkness, their whispered conversations meandered through childhood memories and secret hopes. Lorenzo spoke of wanting to study history before family obligations claimed him. Olivia described dreams of opening her own restaurant someday. After Emma departed Sunday evening, loaded down with designer gifts and wedding invitation in hand, Olivia found Lorenzo in the library. Firelight danced across his sharp features as he stared into the flames. "You didn't have to be so kind to her," Olivia said softly, watching him from the doorway. Lorenzo remained still, his voice unusually quiet. "Perhaps I wanted her to like me. Perhaps I wanted someone in your life to believe I'm worthy of you." The raw honesty in his words made Olivia's heart stutter. When he finally turned to face her, his carefully maintained facade had cracked, revealing something that made her breath catch. Before either could acknowledge the weight of the moment, rapid footsteps approached. "Sir," his security chief called, "we need to begin preparations for the Moretti wedding immediately." The Italian twilight painted Lake Como in shades of gold and purple as Olivia stood on the ornate balcony of Villa Moretti. Below, the immaculately manicured gardens twinkled with thousands of lights, illuminating the crowd of international crime families who moved through the space like deadly dancers in an elaborate ballet. Her custom-designed burgundy gown hugged every curve, the material sliding like water over her fuller figure. Weeks of Lorenzo's heated gazes and fierce defenses of her body had transformed her former self-consciousness into quiet confidence. She belonged here, among these dangerous people, in this beautiful place. Warm fingers pressed against the small of her back as Lorenzo joined her at the balcony's edge. His touch sent familiar electricity through her body, a sensation that was becoming harder to dismiss as merely part of their act. "You've charmed every capo here," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "Even my enemies are jealous I found you first." His possessive tone made her shiver despite the warm evening air. Inside the grand ballroom, Olivia moved through the crowd with practiced grace, speaking the right words to the right people, collecting information while appearing to share it. She caught fragments of business discussions disguised as casual conversation, noting which families aligned with whom. She felt Antonio Rossi's gaze before she saw him. The rival family's heir watched her from across the room with predatory focus, his handsome features masking something cold and calculating. When Lorenzo was called away for a private meeting with the Moretti elders, Antonio made his move. "The lovely Olivia Russo," he said, materializing beside her with 2 champagne glasses. Or, should I say, the future Mrs. Valenti. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Drawing on weeks of Lorenzo's training, Olivia engaged in the dangerous dance of conversation. Every question about her relationship with Lorenzo was met with a carefully crafted response that revealed nothing while extracting details about Rossi territory movements. Her years of waitressing had taught her to read a room, to notice the subtle rhythms of service staff. So when Antonio signaled to a waiter, something in the man's movements set off alarm bells. His gait was too stiff, his approach too direct. As the fake waiter presented champagne to Lorenzo upon his return, Olivia's body moved on instinct. She stumbled forward, her hand catching the waiter's arm at precisely the right angle to send the glasses crashing to the marble floor. Lorenzo's reaction was immediate. The glasses were collected for testing, confirming what Olivia had suspected, enough poison to kill a man in minutes. Security descended like shadows, but Antonio had already vanished into the crowd. Later, in their lakeside suite, Lorenzo's question cut through the tense silence. No innocent waitress spots that so easily. His dark eyes studied her with suspicious intensity. How did you know? Olivia's hands trembled as she removed her diamond earrings. My mother, she began softly, didn't die in a car accident. The truth spilled out, the loan shark, the poisoned coffee, the threats against Emma that forced Olivia to learn everything she could about toxic substances. Lorenzo absorbed this information in silence, his perception of her visibly shifting. She wasn't just a convenient pawn in his game anymore. She was a survivor, like him, shaped by violence and necessity. A sharp knock interrupted them. Sir, Antonio Rossi has disappeared, his security chief reported. But we've captured the assassin. Dawn painted Lake Como in soft pastels. As they prepared for an immediate return to Chicago, Lorenzo approached Olivia, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. You saved my life, he said quietly. The debt is mine. To her astonishment, he knelt before her, taking her hand. When we return, we announce our engagement formally. Not for the Morettis, not for business, but because I want you by my side. Before Olivia could process this shift from pretense to reality, security burst through the door. We found Rossi, boss. Lorenzo's tender expression hardened instantly into something lethal. Take them to the warehouse, he commanded. I'll deal with them myself. His eyes met Olivia's. It's time you see exactly what I am, cara mia. Then decide if you still want this ring on your finger. The study's heavy silence pressed in around Olivia as she sat in one of Lorenzo's leather armchairs, still wearing her wrinkled travel clothes from Italy. Her hands trembled slightly as she twisted the diamond ring on her finger, watching it catch the firelight. The events at the warehouse kept replaying in her mind the methodical way Lorenzo had extracted information, each calculated act of violence revealing the monster that lived beneath his controlled exterior. She could still hear the screams, see the blood. The precision of his brutality had been almost artistic in its horror. He hadn't rushed, hadn't shown anger. Each cut, each broken bone had served a purpose. The cold efficiency had been more terrifying than rage would have been. The mansion's security system chimed softly, announcing Lorenzo's return. Olivia straightened in her chair, heart pounding as his footsteps approached the study. He paused in the doorway, jacket gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking impossibly composed for a man who had spent hours conducting an interrogation. You waited? He observed, voice neutral as he crossed to the drink cart and poured 2 fingers of whiskey. Should I have run? Olivia asked, proud that her voice remained steady. Lorenzo took a measured sip before turning to face her. Most would have. He made no move to approach her, maintaining a careful distance. I won't insult you with excuses or apologies. Violence is the currency of my world. Fear is how I maintain power. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. Is that what I am? Something you own? The words came out sharp, angry. You're everything. The intensity of his response made her breath catch, which is why Antonio Rossi had to suffer. Do you know what we found in his phone? Detailed plans for your kidnapping. Every torture he intended to inflict to break my growing attachment to you. The revelation hit Olivia like a physical blow. That's why you... Every cut, every broken bone, served one purpose, Lorenzo interrupted, finally moving closer. To ensure no one would ever dare touch you. Olivia stood, closing the distance between them. I've seen both sides of you now, the monster and the man. I'm still here. Why? His question was barely a whisper. Because I'm not afraid of your darkness, she admitted, reaching up to touch his face. I'm afraid of how much I understand it. The confession shattered the last barrier between them. Lorenzo's mouth claimed hers in a kiss, unlike any they'd shared before, not performed for others or practiced for show, but raw with genuine need. Months of building tension exploded as he lifted her onto his desk, papers scattering unnoticed as passion overtook them both. Later, tangled in his silk sheets, Lorenzo traced reverent patterns across her curves. "Violence is a tool I use when necessary," he murmured against her skin. "But for you, I would burn this city to ashes if you asked it of me." The declaration sent shivers down her spine, equal parts terrifying and thrilling. She dozed off in his arms, waking in the pre-dawn hours to find him watching her, his usual masks stripped away. "When I chose you," he said softly, "it was pure calculation. A woman, no? One would believe I'd want unless it was real love." His fingers ghosted along her cheek. "I never expected the calculation to become truth." His phone's harsh ring shattered the moment. Lorenzo dressed quickly, duty calling. "Tonight changed everything, cara mia. We have much to discuss when I return." Olivia stood at the bedroom window, watching his car disappear through the gates. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, wondering if she'd fallen in love with the monster or the man and if there was any way to separate the two. Morning sunlight streamed through the dining room's tall windows as Olivia entered, finding Lorenzo already seated at the head of the massive table. His dark head was bent over security reports, one hand absently rotating an espresso cup on its saucer. He looked up at her approach, his usually guarded expression softening in a way that made her heart skip. The atmosphere between them had shifted fundamentally since last night. Their practiced intimacy had transformed into something genuine, evident in the way Lorenzo's eyes followed her movement, in how her body naturally gravitated toward his presence. Taking her usual seat to his right, Olivia reached for the coffee carafe. Lorenzo caught her hand mid-motion, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that felt startlingly intimate. "Last night," he began, his voice lower and rougher than usual. The door opened as Victor entered, stopping short at the threshold. His shrewd eyes took in their joined hands, the lingering kiss on Olivia's palm, the uncharacteristic tenderness in Lorenzo's posture. Understanding flickered across his weathered features before he schooled his expression to professional neutrality. Over fresh pastries and fruit, Lorenzo outlined what they'd learned from Rossi's interrogation. A coordinated effort to derail the Moretti merger had been uncovered, confirming his suspicions of internal betrayal. "Our circle of trust is now limited to this room," he declared, nodding to Victor. "You, Marco, and Olivia are the only ones I'm certain of." The day's schedule took them to Lorenzo's legitimate corporate offices downtown, a gleaming skyscraper that housed his public business ventures. Olivia accompanied him through meetings with department heads and investors, no longer playing a role but genuinely integrated into his world. During a private lunch in his executive boardroom, Lorenzo finally returned to their interrupted conversation. "About last night," he said carefully. "It wasn't part of our original arrangement. If you want to return to those terms—" "I don't want to pretend anymore," Olivia interrupted softly. Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression. For the first time, he spoke openly about his past, describing the night his father's murder forced him to take control at 12 years old. How he'd built his empire through calculated brutality. The loneliness of never allowing anyone close enough to become a weakness. "Until you," he admitted, the words hanging heavy between them. That evening, they returned to the warehouse district, but Lorenzo led her to a different building, a renovated facility housing one of his legitimate manufacturing operations. He showed her through state-of-the-art production lines, explaining his vision for transitioning the Valenti Empire away from criminal enterprises. "I was born into this life," he said quietly, "but I don't want my children born into it." Back at the mansion, Lorenzo took her to a secured room in the basement, a private sanctuary he'd never shared with anyone. The space held carefully preserved remnants of his life before violence claimed it. Childhood photographs, family heirlooms, tangible pieces of happiness long lost. From a velvet box, he withdrew a vintage diamond ring. "This was my mother's," he explained, voice rough with emotion. "I want it to be yours, not for show, not for business." He replaced the showy engagement ring with this more meaningful one, his hands gentle as they trembled slightly. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she looked up at him. Lorenzo cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the moisture. "I never believed in weakness," he confessed, "until I found myself unable to imagine a world without you in it." Their kiss sealed an unspoken commitment that transcended their original arrangement, both too lost in each other to notice the shadow that briefly crossed the basement window. Through the mansion's floor-to-ceiling windows, Olivia watched Lorenzo demonstrate a basic wrist escape to Emma in the garden pavilion. His massive frame moved with surprising gentleness as he adjusted her sister's grip, showing the same patience he'd exhibited teaching Olivia to shoot. Victor cleared his throat, drawing her attention back to the security plans spread across Lorenzo's mahogany desk. "The guest list has been triple vetted," Victor said, his gruff tone softened by months of working alongside her. "Every server, valet, and musician has been background checked." He pointed to the blueprint's red markings. "Armed security here, here, and here. Lorenzo wants the protection invisible but overwhelming." Olivia nodded, having learned to read these tactical arrangements. "The Moretti delegation? Arriving Thursday morning. We've secured the entire East Wing for them." Victor's weathered features creased with reluctant approval. "You've learned our ways quickly." "She's a natural." Lorenzo's deep voice came from the doorway. He'd returned with Emma, who was practically bouncing with excitement from her lesson. "Liv, you should see what Lorenzo taught me." Emma demonstrated the escape move, her earlier nervousness around the imposing crime boss completely gone. Olivia couldn't help smiling at how naturally Lorenzo had integrated himself into their small family unit. After Emma departed with her assigned security detail, the mansion settled into evening quiet. Olivia found Lorenzo in the library, silhouetted against flames crackling in the massive fireplace. He turned at her approach, drawing her into his arms with a tenderness that still surprised her. Their conversation drifted to childhood memories, until Lorenzo's expression darkened. "I've never told anyone the full truth about that night," he said quietly. His voice remained steady as he described watching his parents' torture and execution through a hidden panel at age 12. The clinical detail couldn't mask his lingering trauma. Rolling up his sleeve, he revealed a jagged scar on his forearm. "My first kill. One of their assassins came back searching the house. I used my father's letter opener." His fingers traced the old wound. "I've been covered in blood ever since. Until you, I never thought I could be anything but the monster that night created." Olivia placed her hand over his. "I understand loss changing you," she said softly, sharing her own defining moment, holding her dying mother after the poisoning, then having to become Emma's guardian at 17. "We both had to grow up too fast." Lorenzo pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. "Your compassion. It awakens something I thought died with them. You make me want to be worthy of more than fear." Later, in their darkened bedroom, Olivia's fingers mapped the network of scars across Lorenzo's chest and arms, bullet wounds, knife fights, the physical record of his violent ascent to power. "Do you ever think about leaving it all behind?" she whispered. The silence stretched before Lorenzo answered. "Before you, no. The family was everything. Now." His arms tightened around her. "Now I find myself imagining somewhere far from Chicago. Somewhere the Valenti name means nothing." His phone buzzed with Victor's alert about suspicious activity downtown. Lorenzo kissed her with uncharacteristic gentleness before rising. "Get some sleep, Cara Mia. Tomorrow we finalize the gala security." He dressed efficiently in the darkness, the tender lover once again, becoming the feared crime boss. Through the massive windows of her newly designated closet in the master suite, Olivia watched security teams positioning around the estate's perimeter. The morning sun glinted off their weapons, a stark contrast to the ethereal white and gold custom gown being fitted to her curves. 3 designers fussed with the intricate beadwork while a team of stylists worked on her hair and makeup. "Lift your arms, please, Miss Russo," the head seamstress requested, adjusting the bodice. The gown was a masterpiece of Italian craftsmanship, personally commissioned by Lorenzo from Milan's finest atelier. Its cost could have paid off all her old medical bills twice over. Security personnel lined the walls, their earpieces occasionally crackling with updates. Marco supervised from the doorway, his usual stoic expression even more intense today. The gala wasn't just a celebration. It was a declaration of power, a message to both allies and enemies about the Valenti family's strength. Throughout the morning, Lorenzo alternated between overseeing security details and checking on her preparations. Each time he entered, his eyes softened momentarily before returning to their calculating vigilance. During one visit, he dismissed everyone except the seamstress, watching the final adjustments with unexpected attention to detail. By early afternoon, Olivia found herself alone with Lorenzo in his study. He presented her with an ornate velvet jewelry case, his movements uncharacteristically gentle. Inside nestled a breathtaking diamond and emerald necklace, the stones catching the light like captured stars. "My grandmother's," he explained, lifting it carefully. "The Moretti patriarch will recognize it. In our world, this means you're truly family now." His fingers brushed her neck as he fastened the clasp, sending shivers down her spine. His phone's harsh ring shattered the intimate moment. Lorenzo's expression hardened as he checked the caller ID. "I must take this," he said, stepping into the hallway. Alone in the study, Olivia's attention was drawn to the wall safe, its door slightly ajar, something the meticulous Lorenzo would never normally allow. Inside, manila folders contained surveillance photos and FBI reports. Her heart stopped when she recognized her uncle's name, Emma's godfather, listed as a bureau agent investigating the Valenti family. Lorenzo's returning footsteps barely gave her time to process this revelation. He mistook her shocked expression for excitement about the evening, pulling her close for a kiss that left her dizzy with conflicting emotions. The afternoon passed in a blur of final preparations. Olivia's mind raced with questions about her uncle's true motives. Had he been using Emma to get to her? Was his recent increased contact part of his investigation into Lorenzo? As sunset painted the mansion's marble facades in golden light, guests began arriving in expensive cars and armored SUVs. Security teams conducted thorough checks while maintaining an air of invisible vigilance. In their bedroom, Lorenzo adjusted his custom tuxedo while Olivia received final touches to her makeup. Before their grand entrance, Lorenzo drew her into a private alcove above the stairs. His usual mask of control slipped, revealing unexpected vulnerability. "Tonight isn't just for show anymore," he admitted softly. "When I announce you as the future Mrs. Valenti, I want it to be real." The genuine emotion in his voice temporarily pushed aside her worries about her uncle. She kissed him deeply, pouring months of complicated feelings into the gesture. Their private moment perfectly set up their triumphant entrance into the gala, where Lorenzo's public declaration of love left no doubt about their relationship's authenticity. The Moretti patriarch's blessing came with knowing smiles and warm embraces, recognizing his grandmother's necklace immediately. Even their rivals showed begrudging respect, unable to deny the obvious devotion between them. As midnight approached, Marco appeared at Lorenzo's side with an urgent message. The transformation in Lorenzo's expression was subtle but clear to Olivia's trained eye. He immediately signaled for increased security around her, while masking his concern with a practiced smile. "Nothing to worry about, cara mia. An issue at one of the clubs downtown needs my attention." He guided her to Victor with clear instructions not to leave her side. From her position on the terrace, Olivia watched multiple SUVs departing, far too many for a simple club problem. The gala's opulent ballroom still sparkled with champagne-fueled revelry well past 2 a.m., but Olivia's practiced smile couldn't mask her growing unease. Lorenzo's absence stretched into its third hour with no word. Victor hadn't left her side as ordered, his typically stoic demeanor growing more severe with each check of his phone. She maintained her composure, playing the radiant fiancé as the last guests made their farewells. The Moretti patriarch kissed both her cheeks before departing, commenting that Lorenzo must have urgent business indeed to leave such a beautiful bride to be unattended. Olivia's laughter felt hollow. Around 3 a.m., as the final guests' vehicles disappeared down the winding driveway, Victor gripped her elbow. "This way," he directed, steering her not toward the master suite, but to Lorenzo's secure office. The reinforced door closed behind them with an ominous click. "There's something you need to know," Victor said, his grave tone making her stomach clench. He pulled up security footage on Lorenzo's computer, showing FBI agents swarming one of their premier nightclubs. Several key Valenti lieutenants were led out in handcuffs, as agents carried boxes of financial records. "The timing wasn't random," Victor explained. "With security concentrated here for the gala, they knew exactly when to strike." He hesitated before pulling up another set of images, surveillance photos that made Olivia's blood run cold. There was her uncle, clearly photographed meeting with FBI handlers. Then more recent photos, her meeting with him 2 weeks ago at their usual cafe. "Lorenzo approved that meeting," Olivia protested, her voice shaking. "I told my uncle exactly what we agreed, that Lorenzo and I met at the restaurant and fell in love naturally." Victor's phone buzzed, his expression darkening as he read the message. "Lorenzo's back. He wants to see you in his private study. Now." The walk down the mansion's dark hallways felt endless. When Olivia entered the study, Lorenzo stood silhouetted against the window, his back rigid with contained fury. On the wall screen played footage of her cafe meeting with her uncle, their interaction appearing intimate and secretive without sound. "He just wanted to know I was safe," Olivia explained desperately. "I stuck to our story exactly." Lorenzo turned slowly, his face devastating in its quiet betrayal. "Phone records show your uncle contacted his FBI handler immediately after meeting you. Tonight's raid targeted precisely the operations you learned about at Stellato. I didn't tell him anything. Olivia's voice cracked. Lorenzo, please, you have to believe me. His careful control finally shattered. I gave you everything, he roared, making her flinch. I trusted you when I've trusted no one in 20 years. As Olivia continued to plead her innocence, Lorenzo's rage gave way to something worse, cold detachment. He pressed a button, summoning security. Take her to the East Wing secure room. No outside contact. The suite was beautifully appointed, but unmistakably a prison. No exterior windows, reinforced doors, all communications disabled. At the threshold, Lorenzo paused, his voice hollow. I was a fool to think someone could want me for anything beyond what I could give them. The woman I fell in love with was just an illusion. The locks engaged with devastating finality. Olivia crumpled onto the bed, overwhelmed by losing not just her freedom but Lorenzo's trust. Through her tears, she saw 2 armed guards take position outside her door. She was no longer Lorenzo's beloved fiancé. She had become his prisoner. Olivia's world shrank to the dimensions of the secure room, each hour marked only by silent guards delivering meals. The luxurious furnishings, plush carpets, silk bedding, elegant furniture, felt like mockery now. 3 days passed in isolation, with only the wall-mounted television connecting her to the outside world. She watched obsessively as news anchors reported on the massive FBI raid targeting business interests connected to Chicago crime families. The coverage showed federal agents carrying boxes from familiar locations, but notably never mentioned the Valenti name. Her stomach churned each time they replayed footage of handcuffed men being led to waiting vehicles. On the 4th morning, the door opened to reveal Mrs. Calabrese carrying her breakfast tray. The housekeeper's usual composed demeanor showed subtle cracks as she arranged the food. He's been drinking since they took you away, Mrs. Calabrese whispered, glancing nervously at the door. I've never seen him like this, not even after his parents. Once alone, Olivia channeled her restless energy into examining every inch of her gilded cage. The meticulous search revealed something promising behind an oil painting, an old-fashioned air vent, likely overlooked during the room's security upgrades. Through it, voices from Lorenzo's private office drifted up clearly. She learned that the FBI investigation had hit a wall without their star witness. Her uncle had vanished without a trace. More disturbing were the arguments she overheard between Lorenzo and Victor about her fate. The liability must be permanently removed, Victor insisted during one heated exchange. I won't harm her. Lorenzo's voice was raw but firm. Even if she betrayed everything. The afternoon brought an unexpected reprieve when Emma was allowed to visit under heavy guard. Her sister's face was drawn with worry, as she described frantically trying to reach Olivia since news of the raids broke. Uncle Joe came to see me too, Emma revealed, twisting her hands anxiously. He kept asking about Lorenzo, about the mansion. He threatened to interfere with my medical care if I didn't help him. She wiped away tears. I only told him about visiting here, about meeting Lorenzo. Nothing else, I swear. Olivia seized on this confirmation of her uncle's manipulation. Emma, I need you to get a message to Lorenzo. Tell him I just need 5 minutes to explain, please. That evening, the door opened to reveal Lorenzo himself. The past days had taken their toll. His usual immaculate appearance was disheveled, dark circles shadowing his eyes. Though his expression remained cold, he gestured for her to speak. Olivia laid out her theory carefully, how their uncle had tried to leverage both sisters for information, likely under FBI pressure himself. But the raid targeted exactly what they needed, she emphasized. Only someone on the inside would know those details. Lorenzo's phone interrupted her explanation. The call was brief but clearly significant. When he hung up, he moved closer to her than he had in days. Victor's been investigating everyone since the raid, he explained. They found calls between Roberto, my consigliere, and an encrypted FBI number. For the first time, doubt about her betrayal flickered in his eyes. If what you're saying is true, another call cut him off. His face drained of color as he listened. Without explanation, he bolted from the room, the automatic locks engaging behind him. Through the air vent, Olivia caught fragments of urgent conversation. Roberto had vanished, taking sensitive organizational information with him. Then words that made her blood run cold. Emma's security detail had missed their check-in. Lorenzo's voice carried clearly. Find Emma now. Olivia pressed against the vent, horror dawning as she realized her sister had become entangled in something far more dangerous than she'd imagined. Dawn crept through the mansion's high windows as Olivia wore a path in the plush carpet of her secured room. Sleep had been impossible after overhearing the devastating news about Emma's missing security detail and Roberto's betrayal. Her mind raced through every possible scenario, each worse than the last. The sound of the door unlocking jolted her from her thoughts. Instead of Lorenzo, Marco's stern face appeared. Despite his usual stoic demeanor, tension radiated from his rigid posture. "Boss wants you in the command center immediately." His tone carried clear subtext. While she might not be fully trusted, circumstances demanded her involvement. The command center occupied what had once been the mansion's wine cellar. Banks of monitors covered the walls, displaying security feeds from across Chicago. Lorenzo stood at a central table, surrounded by tactical maps and his most trusted captains. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept either. His gaze met hers with complicated emotions. Suspicion warred with growing uncertainty about her guilt. Dismissing his men with a gesture, he drew her aside. "Emma's security team is dead," he said without preamble, his voice rough. "Found behind her apartment building. Roberto took her himself. We have it on camera." Pain flashed across his features. "He's taking everything I care about." The admission hung between them, his feelings for both sisters evident despite their current circumstances. Setting aside their unresolved conflict, Lorenzo quickly integrated Olivia into the search operation. Her intimate knowledge of Emma's life might provide insights his men lacked. Throughout the day, they worked in careful synchronization. Olivia detailed Emma's habits, friends, and regular locations while Lorenzo's teams investigated each lead. The familiar rhythm of working together slowly bridged the gulf between them. Evidence mounted of Roberto's extensive betrayal. He'd been secretly coordinating with both the FBI and the Rossi family, playing all sides to engineer Lorenzo's downfall. For Lorenzo, who had trusted Roberto since childhood, the betrayal cut especially deep. By evening, intelligence confirmed Roberto had taken Emma to a Rossi compound outside the city. Lorenzo immediately began planning a full-scale assault, but Olivia argued for a more surgical approach. "A smaller team has a better chance of getting to her before they can hurt her," she insisted, surprising herself with her tactical thinking. Lorenzo studied her thoughtfully before agreeing. As night fell, they refined the rescue strategy. Lorenzo increasingly sought her input, treating her as a partner rather than a suspect. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Near midnight, Olivia found herself alone in Lorenzo's study, memorizing maps of the Rossi compound. She sensed Lorenzo's presence before he spoke, his footsteps deliberately audible as he approached. "I found your uncle," he said quietly, "in FBI protective custody." He explained how interrogation revealed her uncle had indeed pressured both sisters for information, but lacked the insider knowledge that made the FBI raid so devastating. That intelligence came from Roberto, who had seen Lorenzo's growing attachment to Olivia as weakness to exploit. "I was wrong about you," Lorenzo admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. Before Olivia could respond, Marco burst in. "Boss, our source inside the Rossi compound just confirmed. Roberto's planning to execute Emma at dawn. He's already contacted journalists." Lorenzo's transformation was instant and terrifying. Gone was any trace of the man who had begun to trust again. In his place stood someone far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose. "Get her secure," he ordered Marco, indicating Olivia. "No one touches her while I'm gone." His final words to her were simple but heavy with meaning. "I will bring Emma home, or I won't come back at all." The grandfather clock in Lorenzo's study struck midnight as Olivia paced the length of the room, her designer heels clicking against hardwood floors. Through the tall windows, she watched Lorenzo's men preparing for battle in the courtyard below, checking weapons, donning tactical gear, and loading vehicles for the assault on the Rossi compound. Marco stood guard by the door, his usual stoic demeanor intensified by the night's stakes. Olivia had noticed him checking his phone repeatedly, clearly anxious to join the operation rather than babysit her. When it finally rang, he stepped just outside the doorway to take the call, keeping her in his peripheral vision. Olivia didn't hesitate. She slipped through the servants' passage hidden behind wood paneling, a route she'd discovered during her curious exploration of the mansion weeks ago. The narrow corridor led past the kitchen and down to the basement level. Her heart pounded as she made her way to Lorenzo's private armory. The keypad lock yielded to the code she'd memorized after watching him enter it countless times. Inside, she quickly located the items she needed: the custom-fitted bulletproof vest Lorenzo had ordered for her just in case, and a compact handgun she'd trained with during their shooting lessons. The garage was dimly lit when she found Lorenzo there, doing a final weapons check before the mission. He froze when he saw her, eyes narrowing at her equipped state. "Absolutely not," he started, but Olivia cut him off. "She's my sister. I'm coming with you." Her voice held the same steel he'd admired in other circumstances. Their argument was brief but intense, conducted in fierce whispers. Lorenzo cited the dangers, her lack of combat experience, the risks he couldn't take. Olivia countered with her knowledge of Emma, her shooting, training, and her right to be there for her sister. Finally, something shifted in Lorenzo's expression. Recognition of the same determination he valued in himself. He moved closer, adjusting the straps of her vest with practiced hands. "Stay behind me," he instructed firmly. "Do exactly as I say, and if I tell you to run, you run. No questions." The drive to the Rossi compound was tense, filled with tactical briefings. Lorenzo detailed entry points, extraction routes, and emergency protocols. His hand found hers in the darkness of the SUV. "I shouldn't have doubted you," he said quietly. "The evidence seemed... You saw what Roberto wanted you to see." Olivia squeezed his hand. "He knew your greatest fear was betrayal." Lorenzo went still at her insight, the truth of it hanging between them. Neither fully addressed their feelings, but something profound passed between them in that moment of understanding. At the perimeter of the Rossi estate, Lorenzo's advance team confirmed Emma's location, a warehouse on the eastern edge of the property. Roberto himself was supervising her captivity, preparing for the dawn execution he'd planned as Lorenzo's ultimate humiliation. The rescue operation launched with precision. Multiple teams created diversions across the compound, while Lorenzo led their small group, Olivia, Marco, and 2 elite soldiers, through a forgotten drainage tunnel his intelligence had uncovered. Inside the compound, they moved like shadows through darkened corridors. When confrontations with Rossi guards became inevitable, Olivia witnessed Lorenzo's lethal efficiency firsthand. Each swift, brutal engagement was executed with clinical precision, necessary violence deployed solely for their protection. They were nearly at the warehouse when unexpected security forces pinned them down. Through a high window, Olivia caught a glimpse that made her blood run cold. Emma tied to a chair, Roberto checking his watch as he paced nearby, counting down to dawn. Lorenzo made an instant tactical adjustment, sending Marco and the soldiers to create another diversion. He turned to Olivia, his expression intense. "Just us now," he said, pulling her into a fierce kiss that caught her breathless. "Whatever happens in there," he whispered urgently, "know that I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you'd betrayed me." The confession struck deep, but gunfire erupted across the compound before Olivia could respond. Their window of opportunity had arrived. Lorenzo grabbed her hand, and together they rushed toward the maintenance entrance, heading straight into the heart of danger. Inside the warehouse's shadowy interior, Lorenzo and Olivia crouched behind stacked crates, their breathing controlled and silent. The pre-dawn gloom cast long shadows across the concrete floor, where Emma sat bound and gagged in a metal chair. 4 armed guards positioned strategically around her scanned the darkness, their weapons at ready. Roberto paced near Emma, his nervous energy evident as he repeatedly checked the tablet displaying security feeds. The first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky through the high windows. Lorenzo's eyes moved methodically across the space, cataloging every detail, the positions of the surveillance cameras, the rhythmic pattern of guard rotations, the distance to Emma. His hand brushed Olivia's arm as he passed her a small caliber pistol, the same one she'd practiced with during their lessons. "I'll create a distraction by taking out the lights," he breathed, his lips barely moving. "Move along the left wall toward Emma while they're disoriented. Remember your training." His larger silenced weapon rested ready in his skilled hands. Olivia nodded, recalling hours of preparation that now seemed prophetic. She watched as Lorenzo began systematically eliminating the overhead lights with precise shots. Darkness spread across the warehouse section by section, accompanied by the musical tinkle of falling glass. Confusion erupted among the guards. Their shouts echoed off metal walls as they tried to coordinate in the growing darkness. Olivia pressed herself against the left wall, sliding forward exactly as she'd been taught. Her heart thundered in her chest, but her hands remained steady on the pistol. Lorenzo moved like a shadow through the chaos, neutralizing guards with lethal efficiency. Each muffled shot found its mark with surgical precision. Bodies dropped silently to the concrete floor as Olivia drew closer to her sister. Just as her fingers brushed Emma's bound hands, Roberto's voice cut through the darkness. "Valenti!" The sound of a gun being cocked accompanied his words. "I know you're here. Show yourself or I put a bullet in her head." Emma whimpered through her gag as Roberto yanked her upright, using her as a human shield. His gun pressed against her temple, his face contorted with desperate rage. Lorenzo materialized from the shadows, his weapon lowered in a gesture of surrender. "Let her go," he said calmly. "Take me instead." Roberto's laugh held decades of bitterness. "You still don't understand, do you? This was never just about territory or money." His voice dripped with contempt. "Your father trusted me for 20 years. That position should have been mine when he died. Instead, a 12-year-old boy took control. You were always too soft," Roberto continued, warming to his audience. "Your father would be ashamed of the lovesick fool you've become." His monologue continued, filled with vitriol about Lorenzo's perceived weaknesses. Olivia's hand crept toward her boot, remembering Lorenzo's lessons about the small blade concealed there. His voice echoed in her memory, teaching her exactly where to strike to temporarily disable an opponent. Drawing a deep breath, she pulled the knife free and drove it into Roberto's thigh, precisely targeting the nerve point Lorenzo had made her practice repeatedly. Roberto's howl of pain and surprise filled the warehouse as his grip on Emma loosened. Olivia yanked her sister away while Lorenzo surged forward, colliding with his former consigliere in a brutal clash of fists and fury. The fight was savage, years of mentorship twisted into murderous intent. Both men were skilled, but Lorenzo's younger strength gradually overcame Roberto's experience. Outside, gunfire erupted as Rossi reinforcements engaged Lorenzo's team. Lorenzo's private medical suite hummed with the steady rhythm of monitoring equipment. Olivia hadn't left his side for 36 hours, her fingers intertwined with his limp hand as she watched his chest rise and fall with shallow breaths. The bullet had come frighteningly close to his heart, requiring hours of delicate surgery to remove. "You need to rest, Miss Russo," a nurse whispered, adjusting Lorenzo's foredrip. But Olivia merely shook her head, her eyes never leaving his pale face. Throughout the day, a steady stream of visitors filled the anteroom. Victor, now acting as temporary consigliere, coordinated with Olivia to maintain the organization's stability. Each family captain and associate who came to pay respects watched with growing respect as she handled their concerns with grace and authority. "Roberto is secured," Victor reported quietly. "The safe house is our most isolated facility. He'll face judgment when the boss recovers." His tone carried both certainty about Lorenzo's recovery and grim satisfaction regarding Roberto's eventual fate. By evening, the chief surgeon confirmed Lorenzo was stable, but emphasized the long recovery ahead. "The next 24 hours are crucial," he explained, "but his vitals are strong." Reluctantly, Olivia returned to the mansion to shower and change. She found Emma in her guest suite, surrounded by security but seemingly at peace. Her sister's arms opened immediately, and Olivia collapsed into the embrace she didn't realize she desperately needed. "He saved my life," Emma said, softly, stroking Olivia's hair. "He saved both of us." The simple truth of those words broke something inside Olivia. "I love him," she confessed, tears finally falling. "I can't lose him, Emma. Not now. Not after everything." After Emma drifted to sleep, Olivia found herself drawn to Lorenzo's office, seeking comfort in the space that held so much of his presence. Her fingers traced the smooth wood of his desk, remembering countless moments spent watching him work. A slight irregularity in the wood grain caught her attention. A hidden compartment, masterfully concealed. Inside lay an envelope bearing her name in Lorenzo's elegant script. The seal was marked, "In event of death," but Olivia's trembling fingers broke it anyway. Legal documents spilled out first. Property deeds, bank accounts, corporate shares, all transferred to her and Emma's names. But beneath the formal papers lay a handwritten letter that made her heart stop. "My dearest Olivia," it began. "If you're reading this, I've failed in my promise to protect you. But even in death, I will provide for you and Emma." The words blurred as tears fell. Lorenzo's normally controlled writing grew more personal as he confessed feelings he'd never spoken aloud. How he'd fallen in love with her strength, her devotion to Emma, her ability to see past his carefully constructed walls. "I loved you," he wrote, "from the moment you stood before me in that alley, terrified but unbowed. What began as calculation became the truest thing in my life." Near midnight, Olivia returned to the medical facility, the letter tucked close to her heart. Settling into her chair, she began reading it aloud to Lorenzo's still form, her voice soft in the quiet room. As she reached the final words, his fingers twitched in her grasp, then curled weakly around hers. His eyes opened slowly, struggling to focus until they found her face. "Cara mia," he rasped, the endearment barely audible. "Are you and Emma safe?" Heart soaring, Olivia pressed the call button, while leaning down to brush her lips against his. "We're safe," she assured him. "Thanks to you." Medical staff rushed in, But Lorenzo's grip remained firm on her hand, his gaze never leaving her face. "Don't leave," he managed before the doctors descended. "Never again," Olivia promised, stepping back just enough to allow them to work, her heart full with the knowledge that their future together remained possible. 2 weeks after the shooting, spring sunshine warmed the mansion's main terrace where Lorenzo sat in his wheelchair, surrounded by business documents. Though still pale and moving carefully, his presence commanded attention as he reviewed reports with Victor. The sound of the terrace door opening drew his gaze immediately, his expression softening as Olivia emerged carrying a lunch tray. "That's all for now, Victor." Lorenzo dismissed his temporary consigliere, without taking his eyes off Olivia. She approached with a gentle frown, plucking papers from his hands. "The doctors were very clear about rest," she scolded, though her tone held more affection than rebuke. "No work for at least another week." Lorenzo caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Come sit with me instead, then." They shared a light lunch of Italian cuisine Mrs. Calabrese had prepared, the warm breeze carrying the scent of blooming gardens. Lorenzo's appetite had improved daily, another sign of his strengthening health. "The 5 families have called for a summit," he explained between bites of pasta. "Roberto's betrayal violated our most sacred codes. It must be addressed formally." Olivia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "You're not strong enough for that yet." "I must attend," Lorenzo said firmly. "To maintain our position, protect what we've built." His hand found hers across the table. "And to introduce you properly, not as part of any arrangement, but as my chosen partner and future wife." Olivia squeezed his fingers. "Your health comes first." "My brush with death clarified everything," Lorenzo admitted. "All of this, the empire, the power, it means nothing without you to share it." The afternoon brought Emma's daily visit. She'd settled well into the secure apartment Lorenzo provided, though she remained a constant presence in their lives. They shared dinner together in the informal family room, Lorenzo continuing to teach Emma modified self-defense moves that accommodated her health limitations. After Emma departed, Olivia helped Lorenzo navigate the stairs to their bedroom suite. He leaned on her less each day, but still needed support for longer distances. "I've been thinking about the future," he said once they were alone. "About transitioning more of our interests to legitimate enterprises." He settled carefully onto the bed. "It won't happen quickly, and some aspects of our world will always remain in shadow. But I want to build something you can be proud to be part of." His vulnerability, his willingness to evolve their empire for her sake, touched Olivia deeply. She helped him stand again when he insisted on watching the sunset from their balcony, her arm steady around his waist. As brilliant colors painted the Chicago skyline, Lorenzo turned to face her, standing straighter than he had since the shooting. "Tomorrow I face the 5 families," he said solemnly. "But first, I need to ask you something. Not for show, not for business, but for us." From his pocket came a small velvet box containing a diamond-lined platinum band perfectly matched to her engagement ring. "Marry me, Olivia. Not when it's convenient or required, but as soon as I can stand beside you at the altar." Happy tears filled her eyes as she accepted. Their celebratory kiss was cut short by Lorenzo's phone chiming urgently. His expression darkened as he read the message. Roberto finally broke under questioning, he reported grimly. "The Rosses planned one final strike during tomorrow's summit. They mean to take out all the family heads at once." Determination hardened his features. "It ends tomorrow," he promised. "Then we start our future without these shadows hanging over us." The following evening, Lorenzo stood before the full-length mirror in his dressing room, his reflection showing no trace of recent trauma. His fingers moved with practiced precision over his silk tie, adjusting it to perfection beneath the collar of his bespoke black suit, the fabric draped impeccably over his tall frame, concealing both his healing wound and the weapon holstered at his side. Olivia appeared in the doorway, a vision in a deep burgundy designer dress that hugged her curves. In her hands, she carried the custom beretta Lorenzo had given her, its pearl grips gleaming. "The cars are ready," she reported, her voice steady despite the tension of the moment. Victor confirmed all security measures are in place. During the ride downtown, Lorenzo's hand rested on Olivia's knee as he detailed their counterplan. "Roberto's confession gave us their exact ambush positions," he explained, indicating points on a tablet showing the club's layout. "Our people have been in place since dawn, waiting for my signal." The historic private club loomed ahead, its limestone facade illuminated against the darkening sky. Inside, representatives from Chicago's 5 major crime families filled the wood-paneled summit room. Antonio Rossi sat near the head of the table, his composed expression revealing nothing about his family's planned betrayal. Roberto was led in by armed guards, his once immaculate appearance now haggard from weeks of interrogation. Before the assembled families, he confessed every detail of his duplicity, working with federal agents, while feeding information to the Rosses, all aimed at destroying the man he'd served for decades. Antonio Rossi rose smoothly, attempting to distance his family from Roberto's claims. The actions of a bitter old man shouldn't taint relationships between honorable families, he declared with practiced diplomacy. Lorenzo's response was to produce a thick file of documentation, phone records, bank transfers, surveillance photos, all proving the senior Rossi's direct involvement in the plot. As tension crackled through the room, Lorenzo caught Olivia's eye, giving an almost imperceptible nod. She pressed the hidden button in her clutch, triggering their prepared countermeasures precisely as Rossi's concealed gunmen attempted to move into position. Lorenzo strategically placed teams emerged from hidden positions, neutralizing the threat before anyone in the summit room could draw a weapon. Standing at the table's head, Lorenzo commanded the room's attention. He presented his evidence of the Rosses' planned mass assassination to the 3 remaining family heads, his voice carrying absolute authority. "The old ways are ending," he declared. "We survive by evolution, not elimination." With Olivia at his side, Lorenzo outlined his vision for Chicago's underworld cooperation over conflict, clear territorial boundaries, and gradual transition toward legitimate enterprise. True power lies in legal influence, he argued, not just violence and fear. The next generation deserves better than endless war. His hand found Olivia's as he spoke, their united front demonstrating the partnership that had grown from strategic arrangement to genuine love. After initial skepticism, the remaining families recognized the wisdom in Lorenzo's approach, particularly with the Rossi threat eliminated and his power now uncontested. When the summit concluded with new accords signed, Lorenzo led Olivia to the club's private garden courtyard. Stars glittered overhead as he took her face in his hands with surprising tenderness for a man who had just consolidated his criminal empire. Despite his healing wound, Lorenzo knelt before her on the stone path. "You were never my weakness," he declared softly. "You are my strength. You're mine. Forever if you'll have me." Olivia helped him to his feet, sealing their private commitment with a passionate kiss, while their security detail maintained respectful distance. "I was yours from the moment you said, 'She's the one,'" she admitted. "Even when I was afraid, something in me recognized something in you." As they walked toward their waiting car, Lorenzo's phone buzzed with confirmation of Roberto's final fate, traditional punishment carried out by order of the 5 families. They drove away from the summit toward their shared future, hard-won against betrayal and blood. The Italian summer sun streamed through the villa's arched windows, casting a golden glow across Olivia's custom wedding gown. Emma fussed with the intricate lace details, her eyes misty as she adjusted the fabric that celebrated rather than concealed her sister's curves. The dress, a masterpiece from a renowned Milanese designer, featured delicate beading that caught the light with every movement. "You look perfect," Emma whispered, stepping back to admire her sister. Through the window, black luxury cars rolled up the cypress-lined drive, depositing guests into the villa's sun-drenched courtyard. Victor personally oversaw security, his men discreetly positioned throughout the property, ensuring this most precious day remained untouched by the darker aspects of their world. The ceremony unfolded beneath a canopy of ancient olive trees, their silver leaves rustling in the warm breeze. Lorenzo, commanding in his custom tuxedo, watched Olivia approach with undisguised awe. The officiant alternated between Italian and English, binding them before a carefully curated gathering of 2 worlds. Chicago power players alongside Olivia's former co-workers from Stellato, all witnessing the union of the unlikeliest couple. As sunset painted the Tuscan sky in shades of amber and rose, the reception transformed the olive grove into an enchanted setting, thousands of twinkling lights draped between the centuries-old trees, creating a celestial canopy above the celebrating guests. Lorenzo held Olivia close during their first dance, his lips brushing her ear with whispered promises of their upcoming adventure. 2 months traveling the world, from private islands in the Maldives to hidden retreats in the Swiss Alps. Later, Lorenzo led Olivia away from the festivities to a secluded terrace overlooking rolling hills and distant vineyards. The night air carried the scent of jasmine and distant wood smoke as he took both her hands in his, finally ready to share unvarnished truth. "I chose you because I thought you'd be easily controlled," he admitted, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms. "A woman with financial struggles, family obligations, no connections to my world. I calculated everything except how completely you would transform me." His voice grew softer as he confessed the moment his heart betrayed his plans, watching her stand her ground despite her fear, displaying courage that earned his genuine respect. "You've controlled me since that first night," he acknowledged. "You saw past the monster to the man beneath when no one else ever had." Olivia's own confession came easily in the starlit privacy. She described her journey from terror to fascination, then respect, and finally a love deeper than she'd believed possible. "Nobody wanted the fat, poor waitress," she said matter-of-factly, "including you at first. But you became the first man who truly saw me, all of me, and wanted me exactly as I am." Fireworks suddenly illuminated the valley, Emma and Victor's surprise gift calling them back to their celebration. They rejoined their guests, moving together with the natural synchronization of partners who had faced death side by side and emerged stronger. In the hushed hours before dawn, they stood embracing on their suite's balcony. Lorenzo presented an envelope containing documents for a charitable foundation in Olivia's name, dedicated to supporting underprivileged young women. Then came deeds to a coastal Portuguese estate, their future sanctuary far from Chicago's underworld. "Our children will know both worlds," he promised, "but will always have a safe haven from the shadows." Olivia smiled, guiding his hand to rest against her stomach, confirming her joyful secret. Lorenzo's expression shifted from surprise to wonder, to fierce protectiveness in a heartbeat. As dawn's first light touched the Tuscan hills, Olivia pressed closer to her husband's chest. "Nobody wanted me," she murmured, "until you said she's the one." Lorenzo tilted her face up to his response both vow and promise. "And you will be the only one for all my days."